Welcome to my Y&R Insider 24 update channel, where Nick and Sharon attempt to determine whether Mitch is actually Matt Clark. Jack, Peter Bergman, and Kyle, Michael Miller, on The Young and the Restless image, JPI. In Los Angeles, Claire and Holden made love in her hotel suite. Afterward, Holden declared that Claire was amazing, and he inquired whether she was okay because things had happened pretty fast. Claire explained that she didn't know if she'd ever let herself fully let go before, and it was the first time she hadn't thought about all the ways that things could have gone wrong. She added that it had been really good, and she confirmed that she had no regrets. They had a kiss. Claire gushed that she felt like a whole new person in a good way. Holden asked if she wanted him to stay until morning. She cautioned that her mom, grandmother, and uncle were staying in the same hotel, and she doubted it was a coincidence. Holden bet he could charm them out of the awkwardness if he and Claire ran into them, but Claire said she wouldn't wish that level of third degree on anyone. Claire added that she didn't need her family's approval because she was the only one she answered to. Holden admired her for holding her ground, but he didn't want to add more stress to her family with Noah being in the hospital. Holden started to get out of bed, but Claire purred that they'd only been talking about whether he'd still be there in the morning, and that was a long way off. They resumed kissing. Holden got dressed later and hoped to see Claire again the following day. She said she'd let him know, and he laughed and noted that he was usually the one dodging plans. According to Claire, she was assisting him in experiencing life in a new way in the same way that he had assisted her in doing so. They kissed goodbye, and she closed the door after watching him leave. Claire flashed back to making love with Holden. Her thoughts shifted to her conversation with Kyle before he'd left LA, when he'd asked if she'd changed her mind about wanting him to go. Claire checked her phone and saw the photo of Kyle and Harrison in their Halloween costumes. She replied to ask if Kyle was still awake. Victoria came by Claire's hotel room later, and the two of them hugged. Victoria admitted that she hadn't expected Claire's call that early in the morning, but she'd been awake reading one of Cole's books. Victoria asked if Claire had any insights from her trip, and Claire lamented that she was more confused than before. Claire continued that she wasn't sure if she was learning anything about herself or just running away out of fear of commitment. Victoria urged Claire to take as much time as she needed and not worry about the future. Victoria inquired whether Claire had been enjoying her time with Holden, and Claire marveled that he'd shown her beautiful places and things. Claire shared that Kyle had sent her a photo of him and Harrison that had gutted her, since she would have been in the picture with them under different circumstances. Claire detested the idea that she was failing Harrison. Victoria argued that just because Claire liked Harrison didn't mean she had to be with the boy's father. Claire could still be in Harrison's life. Victoria implored Claire not to feel guilty about the way she wanted to live her own life. Victoria wondered if it was Kyle or Harrison because she could tell Claire felt like she had let someone down. Meanwhile, in the Abbott living room, Kyle flashed back to telling Claire he'd never give up trying to win back her trust and heart. Jack joined Kyle and surveyed Harrison's haul of Halloween treats on the table. Jack savored a piece of his favorite childhood candy and asked if he could join Kyle for a nightcap. Kyle warned that he wasn't in the best headspace, and Jack guessed it had to do with Claire. Jack reasoned that spending Halloween with Harrison was a far superior justification for rushing back from California than confronting Victor's threat. Jack imagined that Claire had wanted to stay in LA to support her family, but Kyle contemplated whether he'd made a mistake by leaving Claire behind. Jack offered to listen and give advice. Jack recalled having a conversation with his own father in which he lectured him about the dangers of keeping things inside. Kyle lamented that the more he'd tried to explain what had happened in Nice to Claire, the more she'd pulled away. Kyle acknowledged that he may have lost Claire permanently. It would be much more challenging for Kyle to persuade Claire from Genoa City that Holden was bad news. He recapped his meeting with Sienna, who he sensed had been holding back about Holden's history with Audra. While Kyle was concerned about what might transpire between Holden and Claire, he was of the opinion that Sienna held the key to unlocking Holden's past. Kyle didn't want Claire to think he had given up. Kyle couldn't control Claire's emotions or how she acted about them, according to Jack's advice, and Claire was still grieving her father, whom she had only met recently. Jack understood Claire's need to process a lot in a short amount of time. Kyle asserted that it was why he wanted to be there to support her, but she'd accused him of not giving her space. Jack warned that pushing Claire to make a decision would be a mistake. Kyle complained that it was frustrating to do nothing, but Jack reasoned that sometimes it was all they could do. Kyle reported that Harrison had been bummed that Claire hadn't been there to dress up for Halloween together, and the boy had begged him to send their photo to her, but she'd never responded. Kyle groaned that he had to change the subject or give lame answers when Harrison asked where Claire was. Due to the fact that the ball was in Claire's court and there was nothing Kyle could do, Jack gently advised Kyle to consider the possibility that he and Harrison would not achieve the happy ending they had envisioned. Kyle made a promise to find out what had transpired between Holden and Audra and ensure that Claire was aware of everything. Kyle thought that proving that Holden wasn't who Claire thought he was might help, because it might also push Claire further away. Jack clucks. Kyle was willing to take the chance if it meant protecting Claire from Holden. Outside the shadow room, Sharon incredulously asked if the man she'd bumped into was really Matt Clark. The man tried to enter the club, wondering if he knew her. Sharon inquired as to what Matt had done to make everyone believe he had passed away. She insisted that they were acquainted, despite the man's claim that she had misidentified him. A bouncer stopped Sharon from following the man inside. Nick voiced surprise when Sharon returned to the hospital. A shaken Sharon informed him that she'd headed back to the club, where she'd run into a man she'd recognized as Matt Clark. Nick insisted it wasn't possible, since Matt had died decades earlier after framing Nick for his murder. Sharon admitted that she had questioned whether her sleep-deprived brain had been deceiving her, but when she looked Matt square in the eye, she was certain it was him. The bouncer had called the man Mitch and allowed him into the club without asking any questions, despite Sharon's assurances that she had not been having hallucinations. Nick recounted that Mitch was Sienna's husband's name, and he thought it added a new layer of mystery to Noah's car crash if Matt had been involved. Sharon revealed that Noah had supposedly been going to the shadow room for months, and Nick wondered why their son had made it sound like he'd just been starting to scout locations. In order to put the pieces together, Nick made the decision to see Matt in person. Nick and Sharon returned to the shadow room, but the bouncer flatly informed them that the club was at capacity. Nick displayed a wad of money to bribe him, but the bouncer stood firm. Nick stepped aside to call Sienna, and Sharon tried to win sympathy from the bouncer by informing him about Noah's near-fatal car crash after he'd been at the club. Sharon promised it would only take a few minutes for her to see if Sienna had remembered anything else about the night of the accident. The bouncer claimed that Sienna and her husband had left for the evening. Nick came back and told Sharon that he had failed. Sharon showed the bouncer a picture of Noah, and the bouncer indicated that Noah had been there often. Meanwhile, Nick slipped into the club and approached Sienna, who stressed that she had nothing more to offer. Not even about Matt Clark? Nick inquired. Sienna said the name didn't sound familiar. Nick relayed that Sharon had seen Matt outside the club, but the bouncer had called him by Sienna's husband's name, Mitch. Sienna scoffed at the idea that her husband had an alias. Nick contended that it would be an easy fix if it had been a mistake, but he needed to see Sienna's husband face to face. Sienna swore that Matt Clark was not Mitch and that he was not present. Nick observed that she seemed uncomfortable and afraid, and it made him think she was hiding something. Sienna understood that Nick was upset about his son, but she threatened to ban him from her club if he kept interrogating her. Nick pleaded that he was desperate to get to the bottom of who had hurt his son and why. Sienna stated once more that she could not assist in any other way. Nick requested that she tell Mitch that Nick still wanted to meet with him. After Nick left, Mitch appeared and asked who Sienna had been talking with. Sienna informed him that Nick was Noah's father and that he thought Mitch was someone named Matt Clark. Outside the club, Nick told Sharon he hadn't seen anyone who looked like Matt, and the name hadn't meant anything to Sienna, but Sienna had been rattled when he'd asked to see her husband. Nick vowed to find a way to get to him. Watch full episodes of The Young and the Restless on CBS or stream on Paramount+. Both Claire's inner turmoil as she navigates love and independence and Nick and Sharon's descent into a chilling mystery surrounding the reappearance of a man long believed dead, Matt Clark, are intertwined throughout the episode's intricate balance of romance, guilt, and psychological suspense. Each thread mirrors the other in tone and emotional tension, creating a unified tapestry of desire, fear, and discovery. Love, guilt, and the search for oneself in Claire's awakening in Los Angeles, Claire's encounter with Holden marks a turning point in her evolution as a character. Having carried emotional scars and burdens from her past, Claire experiences, perhaps for the first time, a moment of liberation through intimacy. Her hesitant, self-awareness-filled dialogue reveals that she has worried about outcomes and expectations for much of her life. Not only does the night with Holden signify a physical connection, but it also represents an emotional awakening. She admits that it's the first time she hasn't thought about what could go wrong, a statement that encapsulates years of repression, fear, and the inherited weight of family scrutiny. Yet, the morning light brings with it the shadows of consequence. The realism of the romantic scene is anchored by Holden's inquiry regarding her genuine well-being. The chemistry between them feels genuine, but Claire's reflection afterward shows that passion doesn't necessarily translate to clarity. She is torn between two men, Holden, the embodiment of freedom and escape, and Kyle, who represents stability and unfinished emotional business. When she stares at the photograph of Kyle and Harrison, a pang of regret pierces through her newfound sense of liberation. The image symbolizes the family life she might have had, and perhaps still yearns for, beneath her facade of independence. Victoria's arrival intensifies this introspection. As a mother figure, she offers both comfort and provocation. Wisdom is reflected in her advice to Claire, which is to take her time and not worry about the future. However, it also hints at the family's generational cycle of avoidance. Victoria herself has long danced between love and duty, so her counsel feels as much self-reflection as maternal guidance. Through their conversation, the viewer glimpses the emotional core of the storyline, Claire's conflict between the need for autonomy and the pull of emotional attachment. Her guilt over Harrison reveals her deep empathy and longing for belonging, even as she insists she must live for herself. Jack's wise counsel and Kyle's desperate situation. Kyle's reflections back in Genoa City contrast sharply with Claire's uncertainty. Kyle struggles with helplessness as she questions her identity. Jack, his father, is a solid foundation for him, imparting wisdom acquired over decades of personal and professional struggles. A multi-generational echo of loss and perseverance can be seen in the intimate and understated Abbott men's scene. Jack's reminder that love cannot be forced, that sometimes doing nothing is the hardest but wisest choice, anchors Kyle's restless energy. However, Kyle's mind will not settle. He is haunted by the possibility that Holden, Claire's new companion, harbors a dangerous past. The romantic drama is woven into the episode's larger mystery arc by his suspicion regarding Holden's connection to Sienna and Audra. The audience senses that Kyle's protective instincts may be both noble and self-destructive. His desire to expose Holden stems from both love and ego. He wants to save Claire, but he also wants to be right about her choices. The painful paradox of love, how excessive care can drive someone away, is made clear by his admission that Claire accused him of smothering her. Jack's calm demeanor contrasts with Kyle's torment. His warning that pursuing Holden might drive Claire further away feels prophetic, foreshadowing the emotional fallout to come. However, the dramatic collision of love, deception, and revelation that will take place in subsequent episodes is set up by Kyle's determination to discover the truth about Holden's past. The narrative is also enhanced by the subtle tension that exists between the father and son. Jack's wisdom is tinged with sadness, as if he sees in Kyle the younger version of himself who is doomed to repeat the same mistakes. The return of the past for Nick and Sharon, the second major storyline, takes the audience into Nick and Sharon's eerie and suspenseful world. One of the young and the restless most haunting plotlines is resurrected when a man who resembles Matt Clark, who was previously thought to be dead, reappears. Sharon's shock at seeing him outside the shadow room jolts both her and the audience. This moment is used by the script to combine soap opera intrigue with psychological realism. Sharon's insistence that she recognized Matt's eyes, his essence, beyond logic, invokes memories of trauma, unresolved guilt, and memory. The mystery is initially rooted in Nick's skepticism. Sharon's conviction weakens his conviction that Matt Clark is still alive, despite his rational mind's insistence otherwise. Her trembling voice and haunted expression suggest that this isn't just a sighting, it's a reawakening of buried fears. Sharon's most vulnerable years included Matt Clark, a figure of evil and manipulation. Even under a new name like Mitch, seeing him once more signifies the return of everything she thought she had escaped. The setting, the shadow room, becomes a symbolic space of darkness, secrets, and hidden truths. Its very name conjures psychological depth. It's not merely a nightclub, but a liminal realm between the living and the dead, the known and the unknown. The bouncer's casual use of the name Mitch heightens the mystery, while Sharon's insistence that she looked into the man's eyes and knew it was Matt injects the story with chilling tension. When Nick and Sharon return to the club to confront the truth, their partnership revives old chemistry and shared trauma. Given Noah's mysterious accident and the resemblance of their previous bond, they act in sync. The script masterfully intertwines their search for answers with their emotional history. Their determination, Sharon's emotional plea, and Nick's attempt to bribe the bouncer all point to their shared strength as a couple who has endured all kinds of hardships together. The conflict inside the club is heightened by Nick's altercation with Sienna. Her denial feels rehearsed, her fear palpable. The moment Nick mentions Matt Clark, the atmosphere tightens. Sienna's reaction exposes the cracks in her story. The revelation that her husband Mitch may in fact be the resurrected Matt Clark pushes the storyline into high-stakes territory.